Guess I'll stick to public domain then. On an unrelated note, yeah, I definitely bought the new Need for Speed game. Would have been funny if this were made 7 years ago. Need for Speed or Overdrive in Japan started in 1994 with its first iteration released for the 3DO. Weird choice of console, but hey, EA was very keen on Trip Hawkins' console, you know. It was noted for its realism, its detailed description of the cars, and them FMVs, man. Then they released it to the PC, PlayStation, and started, and the realism was toned down, but they're still good ports. Do I dare say that they're better than the original with additional tracks and fun sheets? Meanwhile, in Japan, another special edition, not to be confused with the special edition, known as Overdriving Skyline Memorial for the PlayStation, aka GTR for Saturn, which features Nissan cars and only Nissan cars. It was the last time we saw them until its full return in Underground. Then in 1997, Need for Speed 2 was released featuring a selection of sports cars like the McLaren F1 and the Lotus Esprit, concept cars of the Ford GT90 and the Lambo Cala, and the obscure Isdera Commendatore. It also dropped the realism, opting instead for outrageous physics which can lead to funny crashes, and it features some good looking tracks and an amazing soundtrack. Some of the stuff like detailed coded track scripts are carried on to the game, and introduced in the special edition, it has 3D FX support for voodoo cars at the cost of the cockpit view. Now, these games are great in my book and deserve a review of their own, but today, I'll be focusing on the third iteration. Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit is the first game in the series to have an actual subtitle. Since then, with the exception of the 2015 game, every Need for Speed game has a subtitle. Hell, there are even Need for Speed games that has a subtitle within a subtitle. Really rolls off your tongue. Released in 1998, it was available for the PC and PlayStation. No Saturn or N64 version, they don't deserve that good stuff, am I right? I'll be playing the PC version and, wait, on disc manual. Ah! No physical goodies in this copy! Not even a registration card. Maybe the previous owner used it before selling it. Doesn't matter, at least it's better than having no serial number. For some reason, the menus are stuck in 640 by 480, no matter how you change the resolution. Sorry, it's just my pet peeve. So this is what a Need for Speed game in the 90s looked like. No career mode with some schlocky plot, no rap music, no customization, no open roads, none of that. Just good old-fashioned racing. Or chase depending on the mode. Their single race, you know, that featured the Criterion remake kinda misses. Knockout is where if you're finished last in a race, you're out. Tournament is a championship where you're racing 8 tracks consecutively, and Hot Pursuit, which is where you get chased by the cop in a race, or you can also become a cop and arrest those foolish racers. Really wish Most Wanted had a Be a Cop feature. Both of them. So at the start, you have 9 cars to choose from without counting the Pursuit Corvette, but if you win the tournament, depending on the difficulty, you win a CLK GTR or an XJR 6. That, and including the fictional and unlockable El Nino car, brings up a total of 12 cars, not including the Pursuit variants. It's slightly less than in 2 special edition, which has 15 cars, including the 3 secret ones, but you could also download more from the EA website, like the Lister Storm and the Spectre R42. Man, they used to have obscure supercars back then. If you have the Australian version, you also get the HSV GTS and the Ford Falcon GT, which you can also download on the NFS Cars website, including EA's own cars. Man, remember when downloadable content used to be all free? One thing you'll notice that while the PC version has the Shigera and the 355 F1 convertible, the PS1 version has instead the Nazca C2 and the 355 F1 hardtop. You can also tune them, but it won't spend a lot of time there, the default settings are too good to change. Right, on to the actual part of the game. Its handling is slightly less over the top than the previous game, although nonsensical crashes may happen if you're not careful. They tend to understeer at least the C-Class cars, yet they're sometimes nippy, especially at these chicanes. I'm using a controller for the review, and I've noticed that when playing with the arrow keys, the steering wheel will quickly gradually turn left or right, but if you're using a controller, moving fully to the left or right quickly will instantly turn to that direction. It looks kind of unnatural if you ask me. However, the physics can be a bit irritating, and I'm not sure if collision recovery will save it. I really don't like it whenever I go airborne. I lose speed, and it carries on to high stakes, aka road challenge. Can something like that happen in real life? I've never driven a car before. And sorry for stepping into spoiler territory, but the El Nino sucks at handling. Can't even turn properly whenever I accelerate. Why do I get the feeling that it's actually a front-wheel drive car? It can't be an all-wheel drive one, I swear. Despite that, the controls are good and easy to get used to. The AI, however, oh god. I didn't remember them being delightfully devilish until I started doing this review. Turns out it was set to aggressive. There they'll constantly hit you, block you, pit you, push you off track. I know this is a difficult mode, I just didn't expect them to be so violent to me. You have to be very careful when trying to go first, as this is more than just an overtaking challenge. The tracks can have pillars in the middle of the road, splitting streets, shortcuts, and if you're all alone or against only one person, traffic. They can be a bitch when you're trying to get a best time with an A-class car. Fortunately, the last part can be disabled. There is also assists. In a Need for Speed game, please. You can enable traction control, brake assist, collision recovery, racing line, although instead of following a line you must not hit the cones to get a perfect lane, and something called Navigator, which makes the game act like B-Rally or something.
Hard left. Hard right. Medium left. Medium right.
Coming back to the tracks, this game has 9, with 1 being locked by winning the knockout in at least beginner. The first 4 are mostly high-speed centric, although Rocky Pass looks a bit more complex and a bit slower with switchbacks. The next 4, however, are a test of nerves, since they have a lot of corners and sharp turns at times, the summit being the most complex. What these have in common is that they share a theme. Hometown and Country Wars are set in the rural farmlands, Red Rock Ridge and Lost Canyons are in the desert, and Atlantica and Aquatic are in the futuristic city mix with bayside roads and an underwater tunnel, and Rocky Pass and the summit take place in the mountains. The only one that doesn't share a theme is Empire City, although there was supposed to be another track based on it, but it was scrapped. It's still on the code on the PlayStation version, but the AI is broken and some of the textures don't feel right, and I'm not talking about the warping. The tracks, however, seem to have conflicting layouts. Here's Hometown and Country Woods combined. The right part looks clipped, and it doesn't end here. Here's Rocky Pass at the summit. It seems a bit confusing. Nonetheless, the tracks are beautiful to look at. My favorite is the tie between Atlantic and Aquatica for its futuristic looking setting and the beautiful sunset on the latter track. All the tracks can be raced with weather, nighttime, reversed, mirrored, or a combination of the 4. And I hope you're gonna get used to one of the combinations, since the game will throw that to you in the expert knockout and tournament. Believe it or not, the PS4 version has more tracks than the PC version, thanks to the hidden tracks that you can unlock by entry codes, such as this underwater track, some kid's bedroom, an underground track in the canyons apparently called Autocross, and most interestingly, a space station. Unfortunately, you can't race with AI opponents nor have any cops in it, so unless you have a friend, you're driving alone, which is sad. Of course, this wouldn't be a Need for Speed game without police chases. Wait, no, it would be. Hot Pursuit is supposed to be the main big feature of the game, hence the subtitle. It allows for racing with cop cars chasing you, or chasing other street racers. For the former part, you have to avoid getting caught and get a ticket. Depending on the lap count, you only get a maximum number of tickets before being arrested. You can only race against one opponent, as the rest of the NPCs are cops. The cops will ram you, deploy roadblocks or spike strips, so be careful since you can't easily break into them like in Most Wanted. Unfortunately, you cannot race for a Mercedes or Ferrari. They don't want to ruin their image with cop chases. So their car street racing is fine for them, but being chased is not? There seemed to be some double standard there. For the latter part, you are first and only order of business to arrest all the opponents by pitting them out to a full stop. They're quite easy in the complex tracks, but on wide open spaces like Hometown, I find it hard to me. Even with the help of spikes won't help, as it's almost impossible to stop them. Finishing in all the tracks, no matter which side you're at, will grant you a Police Diablo or a Police El Nino, so that's nice. Now, the early games had a detailed description of the cars, which tells you about the specs of the car, looking at the photos, and the history of the make, and this one is no exception. The showcase mode kind of feels like an encyclopedia of cars, audio included.
With its bold, angular lines and swing-up doors, the remarkable Lamborghini Countach is often called the stealth fighter of sports cars.
Such a shame that it's hard to get in.
The Spectre R42 was developed to take a bite out of a market dominated by continental rivals. Styling is incredibly sleek, and many fans are saying that Spectre has beaten the Italian masters at their own game.
If that's the case, then how come I haven't heard of it? Sadly, these cars don't have any videos, but to make up for that, you get to see the interior of the cars in 360 degrees, which is cool, I guess. Since the second game, they seem to get gradually less detailed until Underground, which Black Box basically scrapped it entirely, until Criterion kind of brought it back, although it feels more like HP2 and only applies to cars. Back to the game, track infos are actually more detailed as it gives you tips on the tracks with these honestly nice looking drawings of the tracks. Speaking of drawings, let's talk graphics. They look simple really, with the textures of the cars being mirrored and the opponent cars looking like they hover. Hell, even in the replays, your car looks like it's just hovering. But still, this is a 1998 game, so just as such. They're good for the time. I like how you can put custom colors on the car. I like the semi-reflections. I love how the dashboard reacts to the track's lightning since it's just an image with a rotating wheel, and the menu just screams 90s. Nighttime seems boring though. All it does is just lower the lighting, replace the sky, and that's it. No street post lights, no building lights, nothing. And I wish you good luck in Expert Knockout Indoor Tournament since it's gonna throw you nighttime and weather at the same time at one point. Sorry for repeating, but the visibility is very limiting, even with the lights on, making it almost impossible to complete the game, so be prepared for obstacles on the road, and they say Cuphead is hard. The HUD is customizable, which is the first. You can resize the map, place items, enable whether you want analog or digital dials, and much more. As for audio, now I know where Black Box got the inspiration for sound making it underground. I mean, just listen to the engine noise. Meanwhile, the speech is good, especially in Hot Pursuit mode, as you get to hear the cop shout whenever you're getting chased. They only play one sound at a time, so no overlapping sounds, although it would be better if they cut out mid-part of the sounds whenever they request a roadblock immediately, just to be precise. The music is amazing. During the race, it dynamically changes the mood of the song depending on the speed, position, location, cup intensity, and if you crash or flip. It's a nice feature that was carried over from its predecessor. It kinda returned it most fun and boring for the cop chases. The soundtrack is composed of rock and techno, composed by the late Saki Kaskas, Rom DiPrisco, Crispin Hans, Alistair Hurst, and Matt Reagan. The first time I listened, I was like, sounds weird, I like it. And then when I raced the first time, I fell in love. I would say you should not only listen, but you should also whisper sweet nothings into its non-existent ears, but I would come up as a creep. My favorite is another tie between Real Flutterbass number 19 and Aquila 303, both songs for the future Marina City tracks. They basically scream 90s and I love it! Shout out to Series 909, the PS1 version of the showcase song, which sounds like a sequel to the menu song from the second game. Speaking of which, the game reuses Romulus 3 from the previous game, which I didn't know before playing it. So that was Hot Pursuit 98, and it was good fun, but I recommend getting High Stakes, especially the PC version since it has all the tracks from the previous game. Sure, I might not have the Countach or the Half of Shigeru, but you could easily get them through mods. Hell, this game is mod friendly as well, although like the sequel, it has a limit of cars that it can support, so be careful. Sure, it looks dated by today's standards, but let's not forget about its legacy, as it made cop chases fun and made the Diablo SV a poster car for a 10-year-old's bedroom in the 90s, which, to be honest, is better with the pop-ups. I just can't stand those 300ZX headlights, man. It may not be perfect, and it may not be the best Need for Speed game of the 90s, but it sure wasn't a footnote in its history.